Have you ever noticed how the people around you seem to treat you exactly the way you secretly treat yourself? You walk into a room, and before anyone has spoken a word, a quiet verdict has already been passed in your mind. I don't belong here. You tell yourself you are unwanted, and somehow, as if the world has overheard your private confession, the space around you grows colder. People glance past you, conversations flow around you but never toward you, and you leave convinced they've confirmed what you already knew. But was it them? Or was it you? Carl Jung understood something unsettling and liberating about this silent exchange between the self and the world. He believed the outer world mirrors the inner one. Long before you say a word, your posture, your gaze, the micro-expressions you don't even notice, announce your self-opinion to everyone in the room. And the truth is brutal. Self-hate is contagious. This isn't mystical thinking. Modern social psychology shows that humans are exquisitely sensitive to non-verbal signals. A fraction of a second is enough for the brain to register whether someone exudes warmth or tension, confidence or shame. If you carry yourself as though you are unworthy, you send a signal, not with your words but with your very presence, and people respond accordingly. The tragedy is that most of this happens without our awareness. We think the world has decided to dislike us. But Jung would ask, have you examined how you've decided to dislike yourself first? In this journey, we'll explore why rejecting yourself invites rejection from others, and how reclaiming the parts you've hidden can turn that mirror from an enemy into an ally. Jung once wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The shadow is not an abstract ghost. It is everything within you that you've decided must never see the light. Your doubts, your fears, the impulses you swore you'd never admit to, the envy you hide behind politeness, the anger you dress up as indifference. Self-hate often begins here, not with the world's judgment, but with your own private exile of these parts of yourself. You decide, this is not who I should be, and so you bury them. But what you bury does not rot into nothing. It festers, it leaks, it shapes the way you move, speak, and inhabit your own skin. You may think you've hidden your insecurities, but your body carries them in its posture. Your voice carries them in its tremble. Your eyes carry them in their hesitation. Consider the person who secretly believes they are weak. They might overcompensate, speaking louder, interrupting more, pushing their opinions with a force that feels just slightly out of proportion. Others sense the tension, the strain, and instinctively keep their distance. It's not the words that repel, it's the incongruence between the surface and what lies beneath. Modern neuroscience has a name for this sensitivity, the thin slice effect. Studies show that people form impressions of a stranger's confidence, trustworthiness, and competence in less than a second, often from nothing more than posture, facial expression, and tone of voice. The unconscious mind is a master reader of authenticity, and when your outer self is at war with your hidden self, people register that conflict. They may not know its origin, but they feel it. Jung saw this as an unavoidable truth. The more you reject parts of yourself, the more the world will seem to reject you. Because those rejected parts still operate in you, they simply operate from the shadows, controlling you from behind the curtain. That's why the people who appear most effortlessly confident are not necessarily flawless. They are simply whole. They have made peace with the shadow. They know their flaws and do not run from them, and this inner acceptance radiates as outer steadiness. Self-hate, by contrast, is a chronic act of self-splitting. It is an ongoing civil war where the acceptable self tries to suppress the unacceptable one. This war consumes energy. It drains the vitality that could be spent on genuine connection. And without realizing it, you begin broadcasting this depletion to others. You might avoid eye contact, cross your arms tightly, smile too little or too much. Each of these small behaviors is a message. I am not safe with myself, and you might not be safe with me. And so the cycle deepens. You hide more, people step back, and the mirror you face each day reflects only distance and coldness. But this is not fate, it is a pattern, and patterns can be rewritten. To change it, we must understand the mechanism that makes this shadow rejection so visible to others. Jung hinted at it, but modern psychology has measured it. The human mind is built to detect subtle social cues. And that brings us to the next question. How exactly does the world sense the value you've assigned to yourself, often without a word being spoken? If this content is resonating with you, consider subscribing. I make videos that help you see the world and yourself more clearly. Thank you. Jung believed that the outer world does not simply happen to us, it reflects us. The world, he wrote, will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, it will tell you. This is not poetic mysticism, it is a psychological reality. Humans are social creatures wired to detect the unspoken, to read value without a single word being exchanged. You are constantly broadcasting signals, not just in what you say, but in how you stand, how you look at someone, the pauses between your words, the way your shoulders carry weight or relief. These signals are not consciously crafted. They emerge from your inner state, from how you regard yourself when no one else is watching. And the brain of the observer, tuned by evolution to assess threats and opportunities in an instant, picks them up with startling accuracy. Social psychologists call this non-verbal leakage, the phenomenon where suppressed emotions escape through micro-expressions, body language, and tone of voice. You can smile, but if self-doubt is rotting beneath the surface, it will show in the flicker of your eyes or the stiffness of your jaw. The other person may not be able to explain it, but they will feel it, and they will treat you accordingly. Imagine entering a conversation believing, I am not worth listening to. That belief subtly lowers your voice, causes you to edit your sentences midstream, pushes you to nod in agreement even when you disagree. The person across from you may never hear you say, I am not valuable, yet they will feel the diminished energy. It's as if you're broadcasting on a frequency that tells them, you can overlook me, and their brain tunes in without resistance. Neuroscience offers another layer to this. The amygdala, the brain's emotional radar, responds strongly to perceived dominance or submission in social interactions. In mere milliseconds, it assesses posture, eye contact, and vocal tone, signaling to the rest of the brain whether this person commands respect or can be ignored. When you carry yourself with the tension of self-hate, you unconsciously trigger others to place you lower in the unspoken hierarchy. This is why two people can walk into the same room with the same words prepared, but be received entirely differently. One radiates a quiet certainty rooted in self-acceptance, and the crowd leans in. The other carries a subtle apology in their presence, and the crowd leans away. The words matter far less than the embodied self-regard, or lack of it. Jung's insight here is both confronting and empowering. The way others treat you is, in large part, training you've given them. Each time you accept being interrupted without holding the floor, you reinforce their sense that your voice is secondary. Each time you shrink instead of meeting someone's gaze, you teach them that you can be sidelined. The mirror effect is merciless, but it is also malleable. To shift it, you cannot simply fake confidence. Pretending without integration only deepens the split between your outer and inner selves, and people detect the mismatch. Real change begins when you address the root, the inner critic that scripts these behaviors before you step into the room. And this leads us directly into the next layer of Jung's teaching: projection. Because the mirror effect is not just about what others see, it's also about what you imagine they see. Your perception of their perception is often distorted, not by them, but by the voice inside you that has already decided your worth. One of Jung's most piercing observations was that what we refuse to acknowledge within ourselves, we inevitably project onto others. The shadow does not stay locked away quietly. It slips out disguised, attaching itself to the people and situations around us. In this way, your inner critic, that relentless voice that tells you you're inadequate, unworthy, or unlovable, begins to speak through the faces of strangers, colleagues, and friends. When you carry self-hate, the world becomes a hall of mirrors. A neutral glance from across the room feels like disapproval. A pause in conversation feels like judgment. Silence becomes rejection. You are no longer responding to reality. You are responding to the internal narrative that has already condemned you. Psychologists have long studied this mechanism. In cognitive science, it's called confirmation bias, the tendency to interpret ambiguous situations in ways that confirm your pre-existing beliefs. If you believe deep down that you are unlikable, your brain will scan for evidence to prove it true. The colleague who didn't greet you this morning must be angry. The friend who didn't return your message must be losing interest. These are not facts. They are projections, shadows cast outward from your own self-perception. Social neuroscience shows how quickly this process becomes self-fulfilling. When you assume people dislike you, your body language shifts. You withdraw, avoid eye contact, and keep your answers short. These behaviors, in turn, signal coldness to others. They respond with distance, not because they disliked you to begin with, but because you've created an atmosphere of unapproachability. And so the projection becomes prophecy. You feel disliked, and now you are. Consider the person with deep social anxiety. They walk into a gathering already braced for rejection. Every interaction is filtered through that expectation. A friendly joke feels like a hidden insult. A distracted glance at a phone feels like an intentional slight. As they grow quieter and more tense, others begin to feel uneasy, not knowing why, but mirroring the withdrawal. By the end of the night, the anxious person's belief has been proven in their mind. No one liked them. Yet what was truly at work was projection, an internal verdict imposed on an external world. Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In the realm of self-hate, this means that unless you confront the inner critic directly, you will go on mistaking its voice for the collective opinion of the world. You will keep fighting phantoms and surrendering to enemies that do not exist outside your own mind. This is why changing your relationship with yourself is not a matter of shallow positive thinking. You cannot simply plaster affirmations over a fractured self-image and expect the projections to stop. The shadow must be integrated, faced, understood, and brought into the light without judgment. Only then do the distortions fade, and the world begins to reflect something new. And here lies the crucial turning point. If self-hate can train the world to undervalue you, self-acceptance can train it to meet you with respect. Jung called this individuation the process of becoming whole. It is not perfection, but integration. In the next part, we will explore how this process breaks the cycle entirely, so that you no longer meet your own rejection in the eyes of others, but instead meet a reflection you can finally live with. Jung described individuation as the lifelong process of becoming what you truly are, not the image you've been forced to perform, not the fragments you've chosen to display, but the whole of you. It is a reconciliation between the parts you love and the parts you'd rather bury. Without this reconciliation, the shadow remains an adversary, and your self-perception continues to be dictated by whatever you've tried hardest to hide. To break the cycle of self-hate, you must first be willing to look at yourself without the veil of denial. This is not a sentimental exercise. It is forensic work on the soul. You take inventory of what you've rejected, the timidity you mocked in yourself, the anger you feared, the needs you dismissed as weakness. You name them. And naming, in psychology, is powerful. Studies in affect labeling show that simply identifying an emotion reduces its intensity. Recognition begins the integration. The second step is to challenge the voice of the inner critic, not by arguing with it, but by disobeying it. The critic says, "Don't speak up, you'll embarrass yourself." You speak anyway. It says, "Don't set that boundary, you'll lose people." You set it anyway. Each act of defiance sends a signal to your nervous system. I am no longer bound by this inherited verdict. Neuroscience confirms that repeated behaviors reshape neural pathways. In time, these small acts literally rewire the way you relate to yourself. Individuation also involves adopting what could be called self-respect behaviors. Boundaries are one. Speaking with clarity instead of apology is another. Even posture, standing with your chest open and head level, feeds back into your psychology. Amy Cuddy's research on embodiment suggests that confident posture not only changes how others see you, but changes your own hormonal balance, increasing feelings of capability. Most importantly, individuation is not about eliminating flaws. It is about owning them so they can no longer be weaponized against you. When you accept your imperfection as part of the human totality, the shame dissolves, and with it, the compulsion to hide. This authenticity becomes magnetic. People feel steadiness in your presence because you are no longer performing or concealing. You are simply there, whole. From here, the mirror effect begins to shift. Those microsignals you once sent out, the downcast gaze, the hesitant tone, the shrinking posture, start to change. Your outer world slowly recalibrates in response to the new frequency you broadcast, one of self-possession. Some people will draw closer. Others, who once relied on your self-doubt to maintain control, may step back. Either way, you are no longer orbiting other people's approval. You stand in your own gravity. And this is the final paradox Jung leaves us with. The moment you stop needing the world to value you, the world often starts to. The need was the signal of lack. The absence of need is the signal of worth. So now I ask you, have you lived most of your life meeting your own rejection in the eyes of others? And if so, are you ready to begin the slow, deliberate work of individuation, to value yourself so completely that the world has no choice but to follow? If this has resonated with you, leave a comment below and write, "I choose to value myself." Not for me, not for anyone else, but as a public affirmation that you are stepping out of the shadow and into your whole self. Because the world can only value you as much as you value yourself, and your choice begins here.